Hey, Soraya.
Well, happy anniversary, Jeff.
Happy anniversary. Happy 100th anniversary.
Yikes. 100 shows.
100 shows. Yeah. So we just posted last week our episode with Steve Wynn talking about his box set Decade, which was our 100th episode.
I think that's a pretty cool way to wrap up 100 episodes.
Yeah, I think so too. But I think since we did pass a milestone, that we should do a little reflecting.
I think that's good.
All right. So I say we do a little bit of reflecting about where we've come these last 100 episodes and maybe end with what we think the next 100 or 200 will look like.
Sounds good.
I said or 200.
You never know.
All
we
right.
could be 1,000. You never know.
We could be. We could be. All right. I think we should get started.
All right, let's do it.
Hi, this is Soraya.
And this is Jeff,
Our podcast is called Paisley Stage Raspberry and Rhyme.
a podcast where the two of us play music that we like and share anecdotes and background about the tunes.
We hope you'll join our conversation. And without further ado, a groovear.
Let's get groovy.
Soraya and Jeff, congratulations on your 100th show. Paisley Stage, Raspberry and Rhyme, give us 100 more.
I think you need to let people know who that is.
Of course. So that was sent in by our good buddy, Frank Dragato, also known as Shaken Abe.
Yep.
His artist name. So Frank, of course, is a good friend of ours. And Frank is also he's the F in JFJ Conspiracy, another podcast that we highly recommend. You can find them on YouTube and on any place where you can find podcasts. They do, the three of them, Jim, Jerry, and Frank, they look for new music and they like to highlight unsigned artists, and then they'll review or look back at a classic album. And they're a lot of fun.
Totally.
Yeah, so thank you, Frank, for sending that in. That was a fun way to celebrate 100.
Absolutely.
All right, so I say we start way back at the beginning. So I've always been a fan of podcasts myself, and I used to have. So I listen to podcasts on the way to work. I listen to podcasts while I'm working out, while I'm mowing the lawn. When I'm not listening to vinyl records, I'm listening to podcasts. So there was a point in time, a few years after you and I had met, that I ran out of podcasts to listen to. And so I started searching for podcasts on the Paisley Underground. And after a couple days of crying and whining, my wife finally said, "Stop crying, stop whining, stop bitching, get out and do it yourself." So I like podcasts where there's a male, female, double co-host kind of thing. I listen to all kinds, single co-host, panels, the whole thing. And so I started thinking that it would be good to have a male and a female perspective. And I started talking to my wife, Chris, and to our good friend, Rainbow. And both of them said, "Soraya." And I said, "Of course, Soraya." So then thankfully, I reached out to you, and after a couple days thinking about it, I think you were game to try this for 3 or 4 episodes.
Yeah, why not?
Why not? And thank God you said yes. I had no idea what to do, though, when we started, not having any experience in this kind of thing. So it was off to Google and YouTube to figure out how to make this thing work. Right? What were we gonna call it? What was our icon gonna look like? What was the format gonna be? What was our introduction gonna be? It was a lot of feeling around in the dark trying to figure this out. But we decided that we did want to focus on stories and songs from the Paisley Underground, that would be our primary focus. And I just looked back because I could never figure out exactly when our first episode came out. But the way that I found out, I was just looking, and we started with WordPress. That was where I had originally hosted the episodes. And that first episode 1, which was, we called it the Paisley Underground Part 1, focusing on the 3 o'clock and Rain Parade, came out September 24th, 2018. So that's our official starting.
Wow.
Episode. Yeah, I could never figure it out because according to iTunes, which posted them a little while later, it was sometime in October, but it was September 24th was our birth date. Unless you want to talk about the times where we recorded, where we were planning, all that, which was a month and a half, 2 months
prior. Yeah. No, and the funniest thing was you said, Soraya, let's just try it out and just bring anything to the table. And I remember bringing, because you wanted to test out how it sounded. And I remember bringing a piece of Spanish of music. I brought some rock en español. And I remember playing something for you, and you were just like, "What the hell is that?" You were like freaked out by it. But
yeah, I forgot about that. But that sounds so funny.
I'll never forget your reaction because you said, "Oh my god," because it was just like you pressed play, and it was just like music and sound and loud and boom. And it was a song by a Spanish group called Hombres G, and it's one of my favorite groups. But anyways, it translates as the G-Men. But anyways, and then I remember us actually sitting down doing a test recording, and you said, Soraya, we need like a saying, or we need a sign off. And I remember going, I think about all those DJs and people I've listened to, and I listen to podcasts too. And there's always something, there's a hook, right? There's something that it reminds you of that thing. And I remember thinking, what in the world am I going to use as my sign off? And I just remembered there was in case anyone has ever wondered, and I don't think you have, but I'll just share it anyways. I've wondered what it is that I say. I say agrubiar, which is a really old slang from Panama from the 90s. And it was like literally like, let's groove. And it was something that was used so much that it's become part of my vocabulary. So, agrubiar, estamos grubiando. And it's just kind of part of my lexicon. So I said, okay, that's going to be my sign off. And then when you came up with Groove on Paisley, people, done. We were off to the races.
Yes. And so we did have so we were thinking along the same lines. I was just thinking very white bread.
I remember you said, maybe you could say something in Spanish. And I'm thinking, what am I going to say? Because most of what comes out of my mouth in Spanish is not safe for people to listen to. But and then I remember that one little saying from Panama from the 90s, and I said, that's it, done.
Very cool. And of course, that's gone on to be our typical sign off. And
yeah, it's our forever sign off, which is pretty cool. Yeah. So, and then we got, the fun part was once we figured out, hey, the recording can work and this is how we can do it, and we've got a sign off, now let's get to work. The easy part was those first couple of episodes.
Right. It was just us at first. So
just us.
So our and episode 2. Yep. Go ahead.
All I was going to say is now I think back to when we started, and I remember I've mentioned before my older brother and that he's always been that person that's kind of turned me on to different things musically. As the episodes come out, he would just like call me and check in. He goes, "You're getting better." And I just laughed. I go, "Hassan, who's listening to us? It's just me and Jeff and maybe a couple, smattering of old friends." But I do really, I look back now and I kind of giggled, but I'm glad that he told me those things because it just kept me honest. It kept me on my, like I need to continuously work and improve on it. But ultimately, it's really been what Jeff wanted it to be, where he said, I wanted it to be a couple of friends talking about music and things they like.
And we did that anyways, you and I. So.
Yeah. So those first 2 episodes were fun because we got to go through the seminal 4. Okay, Jeff has expanded his definition as of late, but we started with the seminal 4 bands of the Paisley Underground, and just we use that as our jumping off point, and where it's gone has gone way beyond my vision.
Yeah,
I'm not sure about you, but
I never expected to have guests.
Well, here's the one thing that we have working for us. Not only is Jeff, really kind of the mastermind behind this, but Jeff is also one of these people, and I've told him this so many times. I just want to capture part of Jeff's spirit where Jeff is like, you know what? Hey, why don't we send a message to Danny Benair and see if he'll come on the podcast? And I'm like, what? Danny Benair? Danny Benair's not going to come on our little itty bitty podcast. Sure enough, Jeff is one of these people that he says, hey, all they can say is no. So why not just try? And I think that's why we have a good working relationship, because we'll brainstorm together, and we'll kind of work it out between the 2 of us as a sounding board. And where Jeff goes, what do you think if I send a message out to Jack Waters? And I'm like, what? You are cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. But I go, why not? All they can say is no. Like, I've learned now, Jeff, from you. All they can say is no. And if they say yes, we win. And if they say no, it's okay because we tried.
Yeah.
And for anyone listening, yeah, we've gotten no's. But we've gotten a hell of a lot of yeses too, which is really cool.
Yes. And you're the voice of reason a lot of times too, because if I recall, some of my suggestions for episodes have been a little bit crazy. Do you remember the time when I suggested that we do a fictional court case where I put the
you really need to spell this out. Okay, let the people hear what was in it, because this is as grandiose as it gets, and this is why I love Jeff, because Jeff sees no limits, but what he sees are possibilities. Please go ahead, Jeff.
So I wanted to act like we were going to put the Paisley Underground on trial, and I wanted to bring in a lot of the key players from the Paisley Underground and have
do what?
To be a jury.
Yes.
Some to be prosecutors, some to be more so defendants, because I'm the crazy one.
Correct.
So
Correct.
I wanted to put the Paisley Underground on trial for only having four seminal bands.
And your judge was going to be?
Who did I have as the judge? I don't recall.
Well, we went through a few different judges.
Yeah, I do remember I wanted to involve Steve Wynn. I wanted to involve Danny Benair.
I think at one point you wanted Danny Benair to be the judge.
I think you're right. I
think that was the last incarnation of that. But Jeff had thought of, how about if we have one representative of each band to argue their position, of why their band was part of it and others not. And then I think we had a and they were going to be defendants, and then we had someone, you had thought about a prosecuting, like, to bring in other bands. Why
Yes.
not this band? Why not that band? Why? And but it had such a cast of guest stars that I remember. So Jeff is pitching it, and I'm listening, and I said, Jeff, I don't know if this can work out. One, because I don't know if people would be willing to buy into the idea of, kind of like a staged trial of the Paisley Underground. But the other thing was, it was a lot of schedules to try
Yeah.
and coordinate. And at the time, this was early in our podcast.
Yeah.
And Jeff and I think one of the key issues was Dream Syndicate was doing a lot of touring. Steve Wynn was doing a lot of dates.
Yes.
So I'm like, do you know he's like off in Europe, or he's in Norway, or wherever. So it was one of those things where I go, logistically, this could be a nightmare.
Yeah.
And but I said, like, I'm all in. Anytime Jeff says, let's try it, I go, yes. All that can be said is no.
Yeah.
And I remember he said, well, if we can't get any of the bands, we can get some of our friends to be the lawyers.
Yes.
and argue their case. And I think one of those times that we came back to that idea, and you thought if our friends could argue, you thought about having Michael Corsi of 3 o'clock be the judge.
Oh yes.
But yeah, so that one never got off the ground.
No.
I think timing, logistics. I mean, now things are very, very different. But back when we started in 2018, a lot of people in these bands were working, recording, or promoting, and I just said, I don't know how we can nail all these people down and at one time. I just didn't think it was possible. So
yeah, it was kind of lofty.
I mean, it's still up there. Who knows? Maybe after hearing this, we'll hear from every single one of those bands going, absolutely, let's put the Paisley Underground on trial.
Yes. And it was supposed to be tongue-in-cheek and fun, and right. Yeah. So I mean, and that's what I do with Long Riders and Green on Red, to be honest.
Right.
All of the members, including the Long Riders, Green on Red, and the Seminole Four, all agree that those Seminole Four are the Paisley Underground. So
yeah.
More than anything, I'm just being cheeky.
Yes.
Can we talk about our first guest? And
please.
It was the person that we wanted to start the whole thing off with. And we made a short list of, once we got through our first 2 episodes, picking songs, and it being just us, we decided, well, let's talk to some of the experts and get their stories about this whole scene. And we wanted to find out where that name, the Paisley Underground, came from. And we had heard the story about Lena Letourneau's red dress. So we figured, where do we start from if we're going to start talking about the Paisley Underground? And we decided, let's talk about the name. And we asked Lena if she would be on our show. And I remember being so thrilled that she said yes, because I thought, this is the perfect place to start. This is the person that was there, that inspired the name for this movement. What better place to start?
Yeah. And she was a fantastic guest. The stories were great. And I think it was the perfect way to open the doors of our podcast to other people, because after that, we started throwing out more invitations and getting more acceptances, which was really, really nice.
Yes. Yes.
Because and it was good to kind of set this scene to understand the history behind it, and then move forward from there, with names and places and people. I think it was really good. And then, after that, we had a pretty incredible talk with Danny Benair.
Yes, yes, that was so much fun. And I remember thinking, we're talking about the Paisley Underground, and we have one of the key members of this movement sharing stories with us.
Literally, yeah. And he was super generous. And I remember Jeff and I thought, okay, we have more than enough questions. You know, he'll probably cut us off at some point. You know, he's a busy man doing things, and the conversation just kept going and going and going and going and going. And I think when we finally hung up on the call, it was like close to 2 hours.
Right. So we decided this is too long for one episode. Right? So we're gonna split
Because our original intent, no joke, and you know, Pat Thomas has told us enough that we go way over. Our original intent was 20 minutes.
Yes.
20 minutes. Every episode is 20 minutes. And I'm like, 20 minutes? Ooh, you can knock that out. You know, in my line of work, I lecture for 2-3 hours at a time. I'm 20 minutes, woo, that's nothing. We've never gone back to it.
We've never done that.
Ever.
No.
And with Danny, it was just like, why cut him off if he's willing to keep talking with us? And I remember, wasn't it on that call that like one of his dogs, it was either Poppy or Tiger Lily, was also giving her input. So it was like, there's you know, people are really welcoming us in from their own private life. Yes. You know, where the dog barks, or like in our homes, you know, my phone rings, or
yes,
you know,
my grandkids,
child calls out for grandpa. It happens.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So it was just really neat.
Right.
That's how you know we're not sitting in a studio.
Yeah.
Unless we were with Jim Hill, but yeah.
Oh, which we were sitting in a studio.
We were in a studio and it was beautiful. Oh my. Oh.
So with our next episode 6, where we talked about the Permanent Green Lights Hallucinations record, that's when I realized that we were doing something, we were talking about something that was again relevant, because I remember thinking, we're talking about a scene that happened in the 80s, and here we are in 2018, 2019, and we were talking about a scene that and music that was recorded a long time ago, and there was no new releases. And Hallucinations, granted, is a compilation of older music, but it was the first time that I remember thinking, we're talking about something where there are new releases coming out, right? Maybe not necessarily new music, but with this Permanent Green Light and Michael Quercio's association from the 3 o'clock with Permanent Green Light, it was like, hey, we might be relevant now, right?
And that was a really good point, because I think one of our first meetings, I asked the question, how far can this go? And I think the minute we started brainstorming and thinking about episode ideas, it really does have a lot of building blocks from this one core. This one nucleus branches out in so many different ways. There's a lot to talk about. And Hallucinations and Permanent Green Light, and that compilation came out as we were beginning. So yep. It was not only relevant and timely, but it showed how it doesn't need to stop in 1980, you know, pick the year.
Right.
But it can be put there. And then, you know, we talk about Hallucinations. Then we talk with Matt Pucci of Rain Parade. And Matt Pucci's been involved in so many different projects. And you begin to see how, yeah, you know, there's so much more involved here than I think you and I could have ever thought about. So it was just really cool to see, you know, this is not just reminiscing, but it's really looking forward too. And look now, you know, move ahead to 2020, And we're seeing posts of Rain Parade playing together, and Matt Pucci's talked about, there's some things in development, and it goes back to show you that good music always finds its way. And so yeah, yes, we're talking about a scene that had a great impact on our musical loves and tastes, but we're still seeing the replications of that. So it's just neat. It's just neat.
Yes, agreed. And then on episode 9, we wanted to bring to the forefront. Oh, I'm sorry. Episode 8. Let's talk about 8. We wanted to talk about the Rainy Day compilation because it was one of those things that cemented this scene in my mind. It was one of those things where we talk about these bands working on each other's records. Well, they got together, members of these bands, and they put together this compilation, which has always been really important to me. So it was one of those things where I felt like we talked to Danny, we talked to Lena, we talked to Matt, but this was kind of the cementing compilation that brought the scene together.
And then when we talked to Michael Curcio, and he talked about Rainy Day and how it was not intended to be an official recording, but really it was David Roback kind of testing out, production and things like that. That's where I remember you and I just looked at each other. We're like, what? And I remember going to Aaron's Records on Melrose and buying it. Like, I remember having it and playing it so much. And like, how could this have just been happenstance?
Right. Yeah.
But I think it also explains why it's so coveted too. It's something that's really special. But yeah, so Jeff and I started in September, right? And so, we start moving forward. So we do Rainy Day, and then we get to episode 9, Prince and the Paisley Underground.
Yes.
And talking about the impact of Prince in terms of writing and providing material for bands. And okay, Jeff. So we go from number 9.
Yes.
Where's episode 10?
Where is episode 10? Can anybody find episode 10? If you look on WordPress, it's no longer there. But on December 1st, 2018, we posted an episode that it was called episode number 10. We called it 3x4x4, a conversation about the new Paisley Underground release 3x4.
Yes.
And our subtext was Soraya and Jeff are joined by friends of the podcast, Dean and Joy, to discuss the new 3x4 album from the Bangles, the 3 O'Clock, Dream Syndicate, and Rain Parade, released by Yep Rock Records. Well, 2 days after we released the episode,
yes,
we get an email. I'm going to share portions of the email.
Please be careful, sir.
I know. So the email starts with, it has come to our attention that you have posted a podcast for download containing 4 recordings owned ... And it ends with, therefore, we must demand that you immediately take down this podcast pending our approval. And there's more before and after and in between, but
okay. So to put this in a context, 3x4 was being released in November, and I remember Jeff and I, Dean, and our friend Joy, Milam, we got together at Fingerprints in Sherman Oaks.
Freakbeat
Fingerprints. Bloop, at Freakbeat Records in Sherman Oaks. And we got together. We were very patiently waiting, and we went in and got it. Right?
Yes, we purchased the music. We purchased the album.
Okay. And I believe there was also an album signing that day.
Yes.
Same day.
Yes.
So So in the store was Danny Benair, Michael Corcio, and Vicky Peterson.
Oh, that was so much fun.
And we got stuff signed, and we walked out. And I remember we all left. We had lunch together, and then we left. And I remember putting in, because I bought the LP and a CD, and I put the CD in my player, and I said, oh, we get to record. And it was having, I think it's official release later.
January of
January.
2019.
So
Yes.
this was November. And we decided to do this panel. And we said, well, if we have a copy of it, ergo, we can play these tracks. Because otherwise it wouldn't be released, right?
That's correct.
Wrong. When we get that letter, we realized that we have to pull the episode, because they were essentially asking us, this can't happen until there's an official release.
Correct.
So we had to sit on the episode for months. And then when it got released, we were able to release it.
Yeah.
But also something else we learned was where Jeff and I at the beginning were playing full tracks without any care in the world. We were informed that what was fair use was about, what is it, about 90 seconds?
30 or 60-second samples, depending.
30 to 60 seconds. We've gotten away with longer, different things, but it was something that, we weren't aware of, and now we're aware. Okay, now we know. And when we've had artists on who own the material, we've asked for permission to play the whole, a complete track or maybe a longer portion. But it was just interesting because Jeff and I remember Jeff getting the email and reaching out to me and said, I got to talk to you about something. And, I said, wait, what? I think at the time, Jeff, we had maybe 80 listeners.
Yes.
Yeah, we were small. And I said, you got to be kidding me that we've got this. I said, how did they find us? But I said, okay, let's just pull it. I mean, there's nothing we can do. And I don't want to make Yep Rock upset, because this was going to come out. And, it really was something huge. So we pulled the episode. So those of you who may wonder, our episode numbers go one way, but what's listed on things like iTunes is another. And it seems like we're always one behind.
Yes. Yeah.
There you go.
That's because number 10 got pulled.
Adventures in podcasting.
Yes. And of course, what we want to do is we want to share music, and we want to drive people to the music, to the artists, to in theory, in hopes that somebody would find something that they like and support these artists.
Right.
That's definitely what our goal is and our hope is.
Totally. Keep
these artists supported and continuing to make music.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was just interesting. It's an interesting piece of trivia.
Yeah.
And then of course, holidays, right?
Yes.
So Jeff and I go, holiday special. And Jeff says, let's get some musicians to share a little holiday cheer. And I say, go ahead, Jeff. All I can say is no. And then we have that beautiful holiday message for everybody, which is still so heartwarming. And it's really, really sweet that people at such a busy time of the year were super kind to share a message for all our listeners.
That was so cool.
Yeah.
And people of different faiths, different worldviews, but all coming together and sharing that that love for the community. It was
Oh
it was
yeah,
amazing.
big, 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 big.
And then our first talk with Steve Wynn.
Yeah,
And that's when I think we realized that this man has some stories to tell, and we can't capture everything in one episode with Steve because man, his passion, it's so generous with his time with us, and I just remember being thrilled because I had the opportunity of meeting Steve on a couple occasions, namely with um, his band, The Baseball Project, and I just thought this guy is super cool, super nice, and I just remember being thrilled when he came on to talk
yeah,
about the 3x4 release, as well as we tried to hit on
other
everything, I
things.
think.
Yeah, and that's what's really nice about getting a chance to talk with some of the musicians from the bands that we love is hearing the stories that they have, the anecdotes, and also hearing about the things that they're working on, and it's just really refreshing to hear. And I mean, we've had great guests on. I mean, seriously, just really great guests on, and people who are generous with their time, but also with their stories. Yeah,
That's one of my favorite parts about the podcast is some of the stories that some of our guests have, for sure.
totally. And then we end 2018 with an episode called Covered in Paisley. And we talked about um, certain covers done by the four seminal Paisley underground bands. That was a fun episode too.
That was fun, and it was one of those where, and I always like the ones where it's just you and I listening to music and talking about the
Yeah,
stories.
yeah. Because Jeff being a musician, me not being a non-musician, we hear different things. Same song, but we different things stand out to us.
Absolutely.
And, but anyways, and then we start 2019, and I think this is where we kind of did a whole lot of different things. We did album focuses. We did focuses on artists, particular artists, and we looked at certain themes. So we kind of started taking the podcast in different ways. So like that first album focus series, we took one album from each of the four to focus on. For 3 o'clock, we had Danny Benair back on to talk about Arrive Without Traveling. Then we talked about the Bangles All Over the Place. Then and then the infamous 3x4x4 episode, which finally saw the light of day. And then because we broke it up, in early 2019, Long Riders come out with their first new release in a good while,
Yes.
Psychedelic Country Soul, and we took advantage of that, and we did a panel talk on that. And then we went back to the album focus series, and we took a look at Rain Parade. And what album, Jeff?
Crashing Dream. And we
Thank
had
you very
on
much.
John Thoman, Stephen Robeck, and Matt Pucci. And they were all sitting in the same room together, chatting with us.
Talking to us. It was crazy.
Yeah.
It was crazy, but it was the coolest thing too, was to talk. And was it not too long after that Jeff and I focused on certain songs and stuff, but it was just really cool to be able to talk about it with the artists who play it and recorded it. It was just pretty wild.
That was wild. I remember digging into some of the lyrics on that, and just some of the stories behind those lyrics were
wild.
Yep.
Yeah. And then we had a little break because I went to Europe, and then you went to Europe same year.
Yeah.
When we came back, again, here we go, past into present. When I came back, we had Permanent Greenlight was doing a live show.
The day after you landed, I believe.
Thank you very much. I've had great luck so far in my trips to Europe. I come back either the day before a show or the day of a show, and sure enough, I go. So Permanent Greenlight played a brunch show at Federal Bar in Los Angeles.
And I'm still thankful to Joy for getting us front row seats for that.
That was
Thank you, Joy.
Thank you, Joy. And so we did a panel review on that. And then, we talked to Tom Stevens.
Oh my God.
About psychedelic country soul and a number of other things. And he's another guy that's been super generous with us and his time. And then we finished off the album focus series with talking about Dream Syndicate, and which one in particular, Jeff? Because this is a Jeff favorite.
I picked Medicine Show for us to talk about.
Yeah, and that's a hell of an album to talk about anyways. And we had some special guests on that one.
Yes, we talked to the drummer, Dennis Duck, and the bassist who played on that, Dave Provost. And I remember not knowing a whole lot about Dave other than him being a great musician and being on a lot of projects. I remember him being really funny, like in a very subtle way.
And cheeky.
Yes.
Because wasn't he the one that told us the
Yoko Ono?
The Yoko Ono story.
Yes.
Please go back to episode 21.
Yes. That's a great thing. And Dennis was amazing.
Dennis is always awesome.
Yes.
And I think there or right before is when I learned that Dennis Duck has a disco album. Dennis
yes. Yep.
Yeah. And then of course a friend of our podcast, Pat Thomas. We've had Pat on, and I always like listening to Pat. Pat's got stories galore, and he's experienced things both as an artist and with his own label, so many different arenas. It's just really neat to listen to him. Pat's an amazing person.
Yeah, he has a very unique perspective too. So I always like talking to Pat.
Yes.
On and off air.
100%. And then we start getting into a series of interviews. One, and each one was like, ooh, oh. So
yes.
We talked to Pat, which was awesome. And then we talked to Russ Tolman from True West.
Yes.
We talked to Derek C. of Gentle Cycle and Rain Parade. He's playing with Rain Parade. And then Annette Zelenkas. We felt we had reached the promised land.
Yes,
because we had someone from each of those of the Seminole Four, except for the Bangles.
That's right.
And then Annette Zelenkas.
Yep. And she was playing with the band again too, so she had a very unique perspective, being someone that was with the band from the beginning and playing with the band now. So bookending that whole Bangles experience.
Totally. Okay, you want to keep going?
Yeah. So Troy Howe was next, and man, what a sweetheart he is. So Troy was the drummer for Salvation Army, who became 3 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
And he had some very unique stories of the early days of what became the 3 o'clock. And man, what a really nice guy.
Just genuine person and a real lover of music, Yep. So it was just cool to hear from his perspective what that scene was like, because also, after Salvation Army, he goes on to Eyes of Mine. So,
Yep, that's right. And I think when we were talking to him, it was just about the time when the Salvation Army was releasing the Live from Torrance record on Burger. And then we had that really cool Paisley stage event where we met up with the band at that park
at Wilson Park.
Yeah, where it was recorded at. And we listened to the record with the band and a few of our closest friends. How fun was that?
First of all, it was fun, but it was crazy. It was crazy because we were trying to get sound going, and there were parties, and there were all sorts of things happening. But we got to the place where they played, Like
Real.
we set up shop there, and it was really and we did like a listening party, which was cool.
That was really fun.
We also talked to Jason Faulkner, another guy with amazing stories, and
Yes.
you know, you just let him talk, and but great insight. He's played and with so many different artists. It's just neat to hear, and he was super nice. That was another like two-parter.
Yes. Yeah.
Then we had Steve Wynn back on.
Because they were releasing These Times.
Thank you. I think in the span of our podcast, since we've been on, 3 releases that involve
right.
the Dream Syndicate, which is pretty amazing.
Yes.
And, you know, a box set plus a few other things along the way.
You're right. Right.
And then Jeff goes to Europe.
And Miss.
And then the Grammy Museum here in Los Angeles decides to have an event to highlight, showcase, have a panel discussion of the 3x4x4. The 3x4. I keep thinking of our panel.
Yeah.
Of the 3x4 album. So Jeff's gone, and me, I have to take copious notes of everything to kind of relive it. And then we had a panel discussion when Jeff returned, and to kind of relive that moment, which is amazing. But also something really cool happened. This was all in, I think, May of 2019. This Grammy event happens. Jeff comes back from Europe. Rain Parade says, hey, we're opening for the Flaming Groovies at the chapel in San Francisco. And I jokingly said to Jeff, road trip. And Jeff says, let me talk to Chris. And we made it happen. And I was teaching on Saturdays, and that Saturday after the show, the show was on a Friday, and I had to teach on Saturday morning at 8. Oh, and I remember getting someone to cover for me so I could fly down, go straight, and finish teaching that class. This is what it's like to have friends. But we weren't going to miss that. We weren't going to miss that at all. And we didn't.
Nope. And that was, we had a blast. That was so much fun.
It was a ton of fun. But also it was just really cool to hear the songs that we love live again.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And then we get a very, very, and this is also very timely, we get a very special guest.
Yes. Episode 32.
All right, Jeff.
Joe Nolte.
Nolte.
And let me ask you a question. Speaking of questions, yeah. I think we wrote down about 12 questions that we were going to ask. How many did we actually ask Joe?
2.
2.
2.
And we got about 2 hours. So it was about an hour answer for each question that we asked.
Yeah. But that's the other thing about Joe Nolte. Joe Nolte is a great storyteller.
Oh my God.
But also, you know, he lived it. And the fact that he remembers so much is really great. And that we can take advantage and sit with him and talk about it. And I say timely because just yesterday it was announced, and today it's official. The Last has released, the long lost,
oh my gosh,
the beloved Look Again.
Yes.
We'll talk about it in a little bit.
Yes.
So after that, we got a really unique opportunity. Thanks again to Matt Pucci. I always said Matt Pucci is like our padrino. He's like our godfather.
Yes.
Because he's always kind of pointing us in the right direction, or, you know, giving us fantastic suggestions. And we got a chance, thanks to him, to talk to Jim Hill.
Yes. And this was born out of our trip to San Francisco.
Right. And Jim Hill happened to be, he was there because I think he was working the board that night. and we just, blah blah blah, we'd love to talk with you. Yeah, how about, when we're back in LA, let's find a date. He invited us into his studio, and he just kind of took us through this process. And I cannot describe, and words will fail me forever to describe the sound that we heard in that studio. I mean, just beautiful. And then he would play us these tracks like from 3x4. And he said, oh, in that corner, that's where the Bangles were singing harmony, for on this song. And Jeff and I were just kind of, we were like, and I remember leaving that studio and having to go teach that night.
Oh gosh.
And I was like in a daze. And I just said, what, it's just amazing the sort of people that you get to sit and talk with about their craft. And Jim Hill is just this fascinating person to sit and talk with.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that day.
That was great. And then our next episode was also a road trip, right?
Okay, so, I talk about unicorns all the time.
Yes.
We had one huge unicorn.
Yes.
His name was Luis Gutierrez.
Yes, guitar for 3 o'clock. Yes.
And Jeff, because Jeff is fantastic at reaching out and chatting. My God, where were we, Jeff, that we saw him and we said, we want to have, oh no, it was me.
It was you at the Grammy.
It was me at the Grammy event.
You made it
and
happen.
I saw Louis and I said, hello. And I said, my friend and I, we have a podcast and we'd love to have you on. And he just looked at me, he said, you put me on the spot because now I can't say no. I said, yes. And he gave me his email to contact him. And once Jeff got back from Europe, I said, this needs to happen now. And Jeff, he was so nice.
Yeah.
He invited us into his home. We sat at his kitchen table.
Yes.
And asked him as many questions as we want. He was really, really nice to us about that.
Yeah, I think when we were done after a couple hours, he said, do you have any other questions? And we said, maybe another time.
Yeah, because we had the listening party that day.
That's right. It was the day of the
and we're like, well, we're doing this listening party. So no, I can't today, but yeah, thank you. And but another thing of, what came up in that conversation is, Luis Gutierrez went on to become involved in Mary's Danish and do a number of other things and, record with other people. And he said, yeah, I've got a garage full of DAT tapes. And we're like, you do?
Leaning in.
And Jeff and I are like, let us into your garage. Let us see what we can uncover.
Yes.
But, just super nice people.
Yes, very, very kind and great stories again, and great pictures on his wall. I remember him pulling down a picture of Mary's Danish with Neil Diamond.
I know.
He said, "Here, you want me to take this picture apart so you could scan the picture or take a picture of it?" And we're like, no, we'll just take a picture with the frame on. But
but see, like that's the level of kindness.
Yes.
Just like, oh, here's this picture here. Bloop, 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 bloop.
Awesome.
Oh my gosh.
Awesome.
Yeah. And that became like another 2-parter because it was just,
yeah.
He was open and told lots of stories and, it was cool. And then we start going into side projects.
Yes, I think that was one of your ideas that I thought was such a great idea.
And then this is where we brought in Ronnie Barnett for 4 episodes. Right. And again, Ronnie could not be nicer and kinder to give of his time, but also he's hysterical.
Yeah.
And he knows so much. So, it's like a total no-brainer. And so we went through side projects, solo projects, for each of the seminal bands. And we started with 3 o'clock, then Dream Syndicate, Bangles, and Rain Parade.
That was so much fun.
Oh my gosh. And Rain Parade, all those guys have got so many different projects. Every single one of them.
Yeah. I remember when we were sharing lists about what we were going to pick to play, just the list was insane. How long the Rain
And there's
Parade
no way
was.
to cut it.
Right, right, right.
From John Thoman, Matt Pucci, Stephen Roback, Derek C., Mark Hanley, onward, on. Where do you cut it off?
Right. Yeah, yeah. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And it was great having Ronnie on. And then we brought on Joe Nolte.
Because we cut him off after 3 hours of the first talk.
That's true. And he came back on and gave us more stories. And I think we asked a few more questions, but not that many more.
Yeah. I don't think so.
But it was cool.
Yeah. And Soraya, we've gotten, since we started this podcast, we get a lot of people sending us their music that are asking us to listen to their music and if we could talk about them. And we kind of want to stay towards, as much as possible, the Paisley Underground or related, adjacent, or LA bands, right? So we've gotten a number of artists, but one that we did decide to talk a little bit about was with Jim Bassnight, who's played with some of the bands in the Paisley Underground. So we did one episode with Jim talking about some of his music.
Yeah, and that also brought us to, again, kind of talking about people who play in the scene. We got a chance to talk with Mark Hanley.
Oh my
keyboardist.
gosh.
But look, keyboardist is really selling him short because he does so many things. Mark Hanley of Rain Parade. And those two albums blew us out of the water.
Yep.
We had no knowledge about it before. And when we heard it, I'm like, this stuff is killer. He's a fantastic musician.
Great songwriter, yes.
And amazing songs and great vocalist. Love it. Okay, Jeff, we're almost halfway. Then we get to, I think, again, 2019 was a fantastic year.
Yes.
For a number of reasons. But we also got the 40th anniversary of LA Explosion. So we got a chance to see the last with the Zeros, the Alley Cats.
And Danny and the Doorknobs.
And Danny and the Doorknobs. Thank you.
Yeah.
Play live. And that was so much fun.
That was a great show.
Yeah. And then we got to review it with our friends Hallie Cohen, Joy Milam, Lena, Dean? Yeah.
Yep. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if he was there. I
know Hallie, Lena, Joy, and us.
Yes. Yeah.
And I feel like I'm missing someone.
Yeah.
Rory.
Oh yeah.
Colonel Rory. Yeah. See, I knew it. And that was, I mean, first of all, it was a great time.
Yes.
But again, you know, that kind of past, present coming together. I liked it.
Yes.
And then we got to talk about one of Jeff's favorite bands.
Yes.
Red Cross Beyond the Door.
Yeah, so they put out their new album, and we had reached out to the band in hopes of having them on to talk about the album. Unfortunately, that didn't work out, but we did get to talk to Carrie Pearson, or Ella, who's close with the band, and she had a lot of stories to share. But we went through that album track by track, and the three of us made comments and listened to that album together. So that was it was our own little listening party for Red Cross's Beyond the Door album.
And then we got to have Stephen Roback, who's been a repeat guest on our podcast. And again, I don't think there's a nicer person out there. Very talented musician and just really kind and generous with his time. And it's every time we talk with him, you know, I think Jeff and I are just a little bit in awe every time.
Yes.
And when we hang up, we're, you know, it just takes us a moment to kind of come back down to earth.
Yeah.
But it's so cool having him on. And then we had our friend Simon on, Simon Eldred.
Yes.
Whose connection to the Paisley Underground is he was a young child in
Yes.
the Jet Fighter video, but he's become a musician in his
Yeah.
own right, based out of Austin currently. So
Yes.
nice.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And then I have to admit, one of the best birthday surprises ever was my mini message of all of some of our past guests and friends. Jeff, still one of my favorites.
Can I say that when I was reaching out to the artists to ask them if they would help out with this idea that I had for a birthday message, that every single person I asked said yes, and they were like, "Of course, for Soraya, yes."
Aw,
And,
I like that though. I think it's nice that, I never think that people remember me.
oh, they were,
And
yeah,
especially like on a podcast, comes and goes. So it was just really sweet. And we have to say, so Jeff played this for me on the very last episode that we did with Ronnie Barnett of the solo projects. And so we were saying goodbye, and then all of a sudden I start hearing it, and the reactions on my face, Ronnie was laughing so hard because I was like, and Jeff realized what?
I wasn't recording, or
Yeah.
I didn't capture it, and I was like, "Oh my god!"
So just know, I have 2 witnesses who saw me freaking out.
Yeah, that was so much fun because every time a voice would come on, you would have another excitement.
Yeah, it was totally unexpected, which I love.
Yeah, that was a surprise for you.
100%. And then we get a chance to talk with Vitas Matare, who's been on more than once, and he's just a fun guest. He's such a sweet guy.
Yes.
And Jeff, what's your connection to Vitas Matare?
So Vitas recorded my band's second album, White Glove Test Leap. So that's where I first met him, but I knew him from the last, not personally, but seeing his name on all the records. So so he was our engineer, producer.
And always has great stories and fantastic energy around him.
Absolutely.
And then, Jeff, we get a chance to talk with the one, the only, the man with a plan, Chris Kakavas.
Yes.
Chris Kakavas, he's something else. We sat down, and again, Jeff and I had a list of questions, and in Spanish, there's a saying, nos va a despachar, like he's going to get rid of us soon. We talked for a long time.
Yeah, I got to say, I felt an instant connection with Chris.
Yeah.
He's like somebody I would like to hang out with as much as
Totally.
Yep.
And we talked about a lot of different things, a lot of different kinds of music, a lot of different topics. It was just really, it's neat when you meet people that are, whose music you enjoy, and they're also really engaging, fun people.
Yes.
And I think it was that episode in particular where we started sharing. He started showing us albums that he had picked up that he was going to play at a DJ set, and there were a lot of disco albums. So we just started sharing memes of disco albums or people disco dancing, and it was the funniest thing. And each time something else came, I go, I cannot believe I'm having this chat thread right now.
Right, I know.
In Germany, Jeff in Temecula and me in the San Fernando Valley. I just thought it was pretty fun.
Yes, and he's inspired a series that we're going to do probably starting next year. So we'll talk about that later.
Yeah. And then once we hit 50, I said, what else? Man, 51, we hit it out of the park. We got David Nolte on.
Oh my gosh, I could not believe that.
Oh man, that was a fun episode.
That was so much fun. So David's worked with a number of people, from David Gray. We had learned that he had just did a show or two with Mickey Dolenz.
Yeah.
Of course, Dave Davies, Wednesday Week, The Last, of course. There were so many. And what a kind kind guy. Again, with great stories, and I think he said he had even listened to a few of our episodes, so
Yeah,
that was kind of humbling.
very, very. And then Long Riders gave us a show out here.
Yes,
Um, it was an odd time, I will say that. And it was the Long Rider show was October the 3rd of 2019. And it was a little hard because we lost Kim Shattuck.
the day before, or
Yeah.
it was within a day or two.
And so as we get the Long Rider show was at the Roxy, and they had something up on the marquee, and there were a number of different places that had something up on the marquee for Kim Shattuck. So it was one of those nights that was just, there's not a good word for it. It was cathartic because there was no better place to be than with people that are your friends and that can understand how your heart is heavy, and seeing someone whose work you respect and enjoy was gone. And so it was an interesting night, but it was a good night.
Yes,
That was where Jeff got knighted by the
Yeah.
one and only Sid Griffin.
that's
with
right.
with that beautiful guitar. You
Yeah.
got knighted that night, Jeff.
I did.
You're
Yeah.
knight of the Guitar Round Table now. But even better was seeing their opening band, which was Ford Maddox Ford.
Oh yes.
And that was a good night. And Amanda Ruth hearing that live was
Yes.
yeah, very cool. So
Yeah.
we did a review of that show.
Yes.
Then we did talk about No Holiday, the Muffs No Holiday with Ronnie. And that was that was much later. We talked with Ronnie much later about that one, about No Holiday.
So the record had already been out for a little while. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
I think it took a while before Ronnie was ready to talk.
Yeah. And we wanted to be
Understandably.
respectful of that.
Yes.
And it was nice having him back on the podcast. And yeah. That was a good episode.
It was great album and a great way to remember a great artist.
100%. And then we got a pretty cool trio that came right after.
Yeah.
So Medicine had a release, and we had Brad Lehner and then Zelinkas and Matt Devine on. That was fun.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So they had that covers album, and that was,
which is a great album. If you haven't gotten it, listen to it. Please do.
Yeah,
You're old at this point, but excellent.
Yeah, I've had a number of people contact me saying that they purchased that album and they still listen to it.
It's fantastic.
It is.
And then, Jeff, we start moving towards the end of 2019. Can you believe that?
No.
We're already moving towards the end of 2020. And we did a show on the Paisley Underground influences.
Yeah.
That was a fun one to record, but it also was a good one to research.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of the fun that I have is preparing for some of our episodes and learning about either picking songs or, going through songs, or learning about the artists that we're going to talk about to offer suggestions on questions that we might come up with. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. I think that was, again, an idea that you had, one of many, many, many ideas that you brought to the table. And I thought it was important because it really established the scene where they came from.
Yeah.
And yeah, once again, it was one of those episodes where you and I were talking about songs and talking about why we picked the songs that we picked.
We went back to the original formula. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then we ended the year in talking about Paisley Underground EPs, and we took a look. We took a look at each of the seminal bands and one EP, and that was fun because we got to kind of listen to, the origin story right there.
Yes.
And then we hopped into 2020.
And I will say, if there's a trivia game about Paisley Stage Raspberry and Rhyme, and you want to ask what our longest episode is, it's this one. So it was almost like 5 episodes that we crammed into one. And there was so much good stuff. We talked to Michael Curcio, Chris Bruckner, Jason Shapiro came on from Red Cross, among other bands, Dan Epstein, and Brad Lindsay. And all of these guys had played with Jupiter Effect. And each one of those could have been an episode. And you and I had gone back and forth several times. Do we break this up into 5 episodes? Do we break it up into 2, into 3? And I thought, right or wrong, 2019, I'm sorry, 2020, we're going to start off with a bang, and I'm just going to throw it all onto one episode.
Oh my gosh.
And
it was a Mondo episode.
It was.
I think we had people telling us, hey, I had to take a break after after hour 1 or something like that. Like, I'm listening to it in pieces.
Yeah.
But
if anybody listened to that from beginning to end, I would be surprised.
Hats off. Hats off.
But all of those artists are worth listening to on that episode.
Oh. And Jupiter Affect is a band that Jeff and I really like, and a friend of ours, John Diorio, also, and Joy Milam and Rainbow, and I mean all our friends. But it's a band that I just think with time, like the music's just been hidden. It's really good.
Yes.
So like we wanted to give them their due. Okay, then this was another really, really cool recording. It was with Jason Victor.
Yes, one of my top 10 favorite guitarists.
Oh my gosh. The guy's a beast.
Yes.
He is a beast. Plays with Dream Syndicate, but also has his own band, Skull Practitioners, played with Matthew Sweet. I mean, list goes on.
Yes. Great guy too.
Oh, heart of gold. Super nice.
Yes.
And then we got to talk with Mark Walton, also of Dream Syndicate. It was like we were closing the Dream Syndicate circle.
Right. And that was a great
all of them.
Yes. So that was a great musical conversation that we had with him.
Oh, totally.
Yes.
Totally. Okay. Then we did a crossover episode.
Yes. That was
this is like when the cast from Happy Days went to Laverne and Shirley, and vice versa. So we met up with our friends at the JFJ Conspiracy and did an episode together talking about Love's Forever Changes, because they do focus on classic albums, classic rock albums. So we wanted to bring one classic album.
Yeah. So we tried to come up with an album that would work with their format and our format as well. That was our thought. And they had us on their episode. So there's that. So we were, if you search out their YouTube episode, I think we were on I want to say their episode 18 or something.
Yeah. I think that's right.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And then we brought in Jack Watterson from Green on Red. And I got to say, Soraya, I mean, it would be impossible for me to answer the question, who's our favorite guest? I mean, I can't do that. Because all of these, each person brings a whole new vibe. But his energy was amazing. It was so much fun talking with him. And he is a straight shooter.
Yeah.
So
no BS.
Yep, no BS with Jack Watterson. But I had so much respect for him after recording that episode. And that was we had so much fun talking with him that we had to split that episode up too.
Yeah.
And we kind of broke it up into Episode 62 being like the Green on Red years, and then episode 63 being everything post Green on Red.
Right.
Both worth listening to.
Oof. And the stuff he's doing now is just
Yes.
really good.
Yes.
And then we got to, this is something Jeff has been wanting to make happen for a long time. And I'm so glad that Jeff was able to get it off the ground. And that was getting the remaining members of the Pandoras from It's About Time era on the podcast to talk about that album in particular. And that was a really, really good conversation.
Yes. Yeah. So we had on Gwen, Casey, and Bambi, and they all, I still like talking to them three.
Yeah.
So they were a lot of fun, and it was really cool to hear about the early days of the Pandoras, and I just liked their stories and everything that they brought to that episode, to that conversation. So much fun.
That was a really good episode. Yeah. And it was nice having the three of them to give their perspective. It was really good. Then we had John Thoman, and I think that was the last of our Rain Parade members, with the exception of Stephen Hunka, the drummer. But John Thoman, fantastic musician, amazing guitarist.
Yes.
Absolutely masterful.
Yes.
And really down to earth, and great stories.
Yes. And then again, for trivia question, our most popular episode number 66. I don't know if you were aware of that, but this is our most popular episode, the most played episode, I should say.
Wow.
Yes, as far as what the host sends us some data that we have listeners all over the world, all the different formats that people listen to it on, and the number of plays. I don't know what that includes, if it's all the formats or just their format, I don't know. But according to what I get from the network host, this is our most popular episode, and it's Uncovering Paisley Underground Covers, is what we called it. But it's artists that played songs from the Paisley Underground, or from bands from the Paisley Underground.
Yeah.
And it could be that we covered, I think, so each one of us picked 2 songs. So there was 8 artists that were included in that. And then we also had Danny Benair, Matt Piucci, and Steve Wynn come on and talk about what they thought about these bands, covering them. That was a lot of fun too. So it covered a lot of territory. So.
Yeah. That was a fun one to do, and it really plugged us into a lot of different artists.
Yeah,
that also have an appreciation for these bands. So it was fun.
Yes, that was
a fun one to research too. Then we had Ronnie Barnett on to talk. Now, I think we need to have a caveat here.
Yes.
So a lot of these episodes were recorded before much of the world went into lockdown.
Yep.
Okay, because I left the US. I went to Europe at the end of January, came back February I came back on Valentine's Day, the 14th. So we had recorded some episodes. One was of Ronnie Barnett talking about an event that was upcoming, and it was a celebration of the life of Kim Shattuck. And that event looked really fantastic.
Yeah.
And it was one of the events that's gotten postponed due to the pandemic.
Yeah, and I think it was to happen right about the time of the outbreak of the COVID, where it started to really be more of an issue. So right
on to talk about the event and to promote it, and it got postponed.
Yes.
So TBA.
Yes.
And as I mentioned, I came back on February the 14th and fighting jet lag. I went to meet up with Jeff and some other friends at the Echoplex here in LA to see the Dream Syndicate. And very, very significantly, that was the last live show that my eyeballs saw in 2020.
Same. Yep. Same here. And I think I might have told you this a couple weeks ago, Soraya, but my wife Chris and I, we don't share the same love for music. Thank God, because this house can only hold so many record albums. But she has different passions, and her musical styles. When she does listen to music, she's more of a normal kind of person, than where she buys a handful of CDs a year, maybe not one a day. But anyway, she's into gospel music, Motown, some classic rock, soul. Um, but I want to say about 6 weeks ago, she leaned over to me and she says, Jeff, she says, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I miss going to concerts with you just a little bit. She said, just a little bit. And she's like, and one band that I would really like to see again and who've really grown on me quite a bit is the Dream Syndicate. So, yes, yeah. So she said, of all your bands, that's one band that I'm really taking a liking to. So
That's awesome. And that night we saw a lot of killer songs that night. That was a great set.
that was.
But, yeah.
And on this episode we had Pat and Ronnie on to talk about that show, who were also there. Ronnie was the DJ playing before and after the Dream Syndicate set.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, Jeff. And then we had Lisa Fancher on.
Episode 69.
Yeah, man. Founder and CEO of Frontier Records. That was a great conversation.
Yes.
And
Another great shooter.
Stories.
Yes, yes. It was fun sharing some stories with her, and she's put out so many seminal record albums. And still, you could still contact Frontier Records, and I think she still presses up a lot of those albums, so they're still available.
Yeah. And then we did a pandemic playlist.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Again, researching some songs to listen to, something to get our mind off of the pandemic, right?
Exactly.
So, yeah, and we had a lot of help from our listeners too, who started adding to our list. So we came up with this pretty long list between what we came up with and what our listeners came up with.
100%.
To listen to.
Okay, then we had Steve went on. This is now appearance number 3.
Because of a new album.
A different album.
Another
called The Universe Inside.
Yes.
And the story of that album, where it was just one long song.
Yep. And I don't think they stopped. Yeah, I don't think they stopped other than Mark Walton to pour a couple drinks.
There you go. And then they just kept going. But yeah, it was really cool because again, despite the pandemic, music was coming out.
Yep. Thankfully. Yes.
And then after that, we got another chance to talk with Michael Corcio, a huge friend of our podcast, to talk about game theory, and because there was a re-release, or a newish.
Yes.
Game theory.
A release of older material.
There you go. Thank you. So we had him on to talk about that, and then after that, we said, well, we're all home.
Yes.
Nobody's touring.
Yeah.
So let's get this panel discussion. This was something that Jeff had come up with a while ago, where he said, I want to get a panel discussion, talk about Look Again. And the couple of times that we talked to Joe Nolte, we asked about Look Again. And he said, never,
Yes.
never gonna come out.
It's never gonna come out.
He's merely a tease.
Yes.
And so we put together a panel, and we had Tom Stevens and Lena Litonwa and Jeff and I to talk about Look Again. And yesterday on Bandcamp, The Last has announced that they are releasing it, and it's remastered and beautifully done. So go get it.
Surprise, surprise, surprise.
Next time we get Joe Nolte on, that's going to be my one question. Why didn't you tell us?
Yes. Yes.
And we've had Venus on, and Venus didn't tell us.
Mm-hmm.
But so be it. And then, unfortunately, we also, earlier this year, we lost David Roback, and we had Matt Pucci on
Yes.
to talk about him and just reflecting back on David Roback. And after that, we also talked with Stephen Roback, but we talked with him about Viva Saturn, but we also he also shared stories.
Yes.
About Rain Parade and about David, and that was a nice one too.
Yes.
So we kind of switched gears. Jeff had an idea of a series looking back at some of the compilation albums.
Yeah, I think it was a listener that suggested that. Actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we decided to run with that. And so we took a look at Wharf Rat Tales, Tokyo Tapes, Volume 1. Radio Tokyo Tapes, Volume 1. Then we talked about the Rodney on the Rock, Volumes 1 through 3 albums. And we did that with Howie Cohen and Joy Milam.
Yes, they were
That
great.
was that was a fun series.
Yes.
That was a fun series. See, Jeff, now I'm thinking. So after that, we got a chance to sit and talk with Aaron Schur.
Yeah. So that, and again, according to the stats that I get, this is again one of our most popular episodes, definitely in the top.
Aaron Schur.
Yeah. So we reached out to Aaron because he had worked with David Roback, and it was we wanted to learn more about David because we haven't had an opportunity, and we won't have an opportunity to talk to David,
Right.
but we wanted to talk to people that worked with him to learn a little bit more about David. And plus, Aaron has his own great stories to tell with his work with the music that he's played with Mazzy Star and some of the other projects that he worked on. So I really enjoyed that. And
great.
Yes.
And then we had, like I said, we had Stephen Roback on because Jeff found while he was organizing, I think like everybody and their mama was during the pandemic.
That's right.
Organizing, cleaning, whatever. And Jeff finds a copy of a CD of a Viva Saturn album called Ships of Heaven.
Yes.
Ships of Heaven was never released.
Correct.
But copies were circulating.
I think test pressings
or
or like a home, a bootleg. They bootleg themselves, right?
Right.
Is that what Steve said?
That was it. That's what he said. Yeah. He said, like, I made a few hundred copies and sold them. So Jeff reached out to Stephen Roback, and we just kind of wanted to put that idea out there that we'd like to talk with him. And I remember telling Jeff, what's he going to think you have this bootleg copy? You know, he might be mad. And then we find out from Stephen, he goes, no, I did it myself.
Yeah. And I think he said, can you send me a copy of it?
Exactly. He wanted a copy of the tracks, which we shared with him. But it was very nice to have him on. And, you know, we didn't want to, I don't know. We wanted to make sure that we were being respectful of him and his family. And,
right.
And he couldn't have been nicer. I mean, always. He's just always very kind, but also great stories. And we went through track by track, and when he said at the end, "Would you mind sending me those tracks?" I thought it was so funny, and I go, and Jeff and I just kind of looked at each other, and we said, "Sure."
Yeah.
And but yeah, it's one of those albums that we hope one day sees, through somebody's generosity, sees the light of day.
Yeah.
Okay, let me get to episode 80. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, we're getting to 100, but
Yeah.
I gotta tell this story. So Jeff and I have tried after Annette Zelinkis, we felt gutsy. Reached out via Twitter to Vicki Peterson. I think Jeff, through a Bengals fan page, you put a comment and it got liked, right?
That's correct.
Oh no. Or you posted a link to our podcast. Long story short, somehow we got connected to Debbie Peterson's assistant.
Correct.
And we've been trying through different avenues to get a message to them. We'd love to have you on the podcast, with a zilch results. Out of the blue, we get an email from her assistant. Debbie might be interested. Give us a little background. And Jeff and I are frantically emailing them. Oh my God, take a look at the email. So we hop on it, boom, beep, up, get a date. Jeff and I are literally hyperventilating. And we say half hour, because the assistant told us, not a lot of time, but 20 or 30 minutes seems. I said, Jeff, we got to get whatever we can. Boom, 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 boom. She gave us about 45 minutes.
Yeah. And it sounded like she wanted to continue talking, I felt like, but we wanted to be respectful of the time.
I mean, again, she doesn't do a lot of things like of our ilk, podcast. So we didn't want to be pushy, but it was amazing. I think I floated the rest of the day. I could not believe it. And it was awesome to be able to talk to her and share our enthusiasm for her work. And I just can't say anything better about Debbie Peterson. She is just an amazing, solid, fantastic human being.
Yes, and so much fun.
Everyone else in this scene says the same thing about her.
Yep.
So, Vicki Peterson, you're next. We were nice to Debbie.
Yes.
So hopefully Vicki will come around. She followed us on Twitter. So.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice. I did not know that.
Twitter or Instagram, one of those two.
Nice.
And then Jeff had an idea called First Listen, where he said, "Hey, Soraya, I want to do a First Listen series. I'm going to play you some people that you've never heard, and I just want your honest reaction." And we did that. Yeah. And then Jeff said, "Hey, let's invite all these bands on."
Right.
We did too.
I kind of had an agenda, I got to admit.
Yeah. So we did the first listens. Then we called them unofficial releases.
Wait, did we do that? Was that our episode?
That was two other people.
I think it was Jane Doe and Biff Jimmerman.
And Biff Jimmerman. Yeah, because they're involved in terrible,
shady,
leggy, shameful activities. You and I were just innocent bystanders. And then we had Eddie Calla on. Eddie Calla could be cooler.
Yeah, what a sweetheart. That guy is so cool. Teaching up in Canada. The original, not original, but early drummer for Rain Parade, who played on Emergency Third World Power Trip. What a great guy. Great stories, and what a sweetheart.
Oh, fantastic. And then we had Steve Wynn on.
Yes.
Number 4.
Yes.
And he was talking about new single, recent releases. He talked about Medicine Show.
Yeah.
And he even gave us a 1-song performance.
That was very special. That was special. Yes.
Yeah. always kind, always generous, but just cool. And then after that, we had Chris Kakovas on to talk about a new release of his.
Yeah.
Two
Yeah.
releases.
Right. Yeah.
And again, it's hard. It's Burn the Maps and home recordings, and it was hard to not let Chris Kakovas just talk about whatever he wanted to talk about because he's
Exactly.
just cool.
Yes.
And then we ended the call, and he goes, one day we should just do a Zoom and just play records.
Yes.
And Jeff and I said,
We'll talk about that.
let's talk about that.
Yes.
Then, okay, wait, I'm trying.
Episode 86 was our answer to Jane Doe and Biff Gemmerman. If they're going to do unofficial releases,
we're going to do
official live recordings.
There you go. We did official live recordings.
Yes.
And then we talked with Petrified Max,
Yes.
which includes members of Danny and the Doorknobs.
Yes.
We talked with John Roswell and Vitas Matare.
Yes. And if you don't have Charlie Drove North, please go check it out.
Oh my gosh. Fantastic. And really worth a listen, and you'll listen to it over and over.
Yes.
And then this was a fun one too. We've had Matt Pucci on, our padrino. We've had him on a number of times, but we had him on this time with Tim Lee.
Yeah.
And I really like talking with Tim Lee too.
Yeah.
And the two of them together, part of they had a release called Gone Fishing.
Yeah.
That's one of yeah. Is fantastic.
I felt like we were sitting in a party with good old friends. Just
man.
If we could all just crack open something or pour something to drink and just
No.
sit on the porch and tell stories.
No, just do what Tim and Matt did. They drove in with cups and beer, and then they kept going. That's what it would have been.
Yeah, exactly.
Drive-through liquor store. And then we got part 2 of the project that you liked, and that was looking at a different incarnation of the Pandoras.
Right. This one with Melanie Vaughn and Karen Bassett, which was supposed to take place at the beginning of the year, and then the pandemic hit, and we had to keep pushing this out because they were going to get together in person. Then that got delayed, and then we were able to do a Zoom, and then finally got to that one. But that album that they did, Stop Pretending, is one of my all-time favorite albums, in my top 100. So it was a lot of fun to have them two on talking about stories from those recordings and being with Paula Pierce and Kim also, who was also a fan.
And then things got really interesting. We got a random email, unsolicited, I will say, not random, unsolicited email from a PR person associated with the Hoodoo Gurus.
Yes.
Wanting to share their new single. And we wanted an opportunity to talk with Dave Faulkner, and we got it.
Yeah, that was cool because they'd actually come up a couple times on our episodes with Steve and Mark Walton and other connections of the Paisley Underground and Hoodoo Gurus. So that was super cool.
We have no idea how we got on their map, but I'm glad we did.
I'm glad we did too. And
then we started an idea that Jeff and I had talked about a while ago was a number of people that we've talked to over these 100 episodes have talked about or name dropped Bill Bartell. And there's a lot of stories there, but the information is not as readily available. So we wanted an opportunity to kind of just start talking about who Bill Bartell was and why people, why his name comes up so often. And this was the first panel that we got together of people who were close to him, friends of his. And it was a great first discussion. And I think every time we've come back to Bill Bartell, Jeff and I go, the puzzle just gets bigger.
Yes.
Like we get a little bit of information but it just kind of adds another dimension to it. And then this is where we took that first listen series to life, and we brought on members of the Telltale Hearts, the Things, and the Steps.
Yes.
And what was cool was some, I think it was really was it the, well, I don't want to speak out of turn, but I think for some of these bands, some hadn't seen each
Yeah.
other in a while, like with Steve Crabtree and Roy McDonald. Roy
Right.
McDonald of the Muffs and Red
Right.
Cross and other things. Um, it was really neat to have this call and see people see each other for the first time in maybe a long time.
Right. Yeah. It'd been
And
years.
and same with the Telltale Hearts, because they had just uncovered some live recordings and video.
Yeah.
And so they started sharing things back and forth. And so it was really neat. And by the way, Mike Stacks has a really interesting book that just came out. Give me a second. I'll pull up the title. I just went.
Yeah. And of course, Mike Stacks does the Ugly Things fanzine,
Yeah.
which I highly recommend that people check out. And of course, that was influenced by the Pretty Things, but he covers a lot of 60s influenced or 60s original 60s bands. So
Yes.
it was an honor to have Mike and the rest of the guys from Telltale Hearts on.
Crazy good. And then we had the Steps. Sorry. And that was another fun one. And John Fallon couldn't be more charming
Yes.
and hysterical.
Yeah.
But it was just fun talking music with them.
Yes. Yeah.
So it was neat to have these bands together and hear what they're doing now, but also celebrate their music, which is really good. And also take a look at these box artists that were really unique.
Yes. Yeah.
Different. And then we're coming up on 100, I swear. Then the Go-Go's documentary comes out. We
Yes.
decide to have a panel to talk about it.
Yes.
With Lina Litonwa, Lisa Torres of The Last, and my big brother Hassan was on it. And that was a fun episode too.
So much fun.
Yeah. And then we had Bradley Scott of the Bye Bye Blackbirds. And that's been one of the albums that it was recommended as a listen first from Matt Pucci, and fantastic. So we had to have Bradley on, and talking to him is really cool. And he's in turn turned us on to a lot of other different musicians too, and albums, which is great. And then we do a Danny and Dusty panel.
Yeah.
With Ronnie Burnett. That was another fun one.
Yeah. So we talked about Rainy Day as one of those albums that kind of cements this scene. And to me, Danny and Dusty was another one where brought in Green on Red and Long Riders, Paisley Underground bands, Paisley adjacent bands, working with the Dream Syndicate and Rain Parade.
Yes.
So.
And then where do we go from there, Jeff?
So I wanted to reflect back on our album focus series where we chose those 4 albums from the 4 seminal bands and build on that and pick an album from the Long Riders, which we did, Native Sons. So that was our episode 98, talking about Native Sons. And then we also talked about in the future doing a Green on Red album and adding that to our album focus series.
Yeah, absolutely. Then we revisited Bill Bartell.
Yes.
With Howie Pyro and Stephen McDonald.
Jeff McDonald.
Jeff McDonald. Too many McDonald brothers.
Yes.
Sorry. But And they just shed a different light on Bill,
Yes.
on who Bill was. And it just gets like, we're just going further down the rabbit hole.
Yeah. That story's
And
not
Jeff
over.
McDonald gave us a really good suggestion of a different direction to go in.
Yep.
To
Further investigate.
further, yeah, I was looking for the right word. Thank you. And then
Episode 100
with Steve Wynn.
and the box set Decade.
Yeah, and to talk about Decade, which just got released and is available for purchase and all that good stuff. But I really liked his description of why that decade.
Yep.
And what that decade means to him.
Yep.
Personally and as an artist, because it does kind of signal a shift. And have you listened through it yet? I'm making my way through.
Yeah, same.
And it's delightful. It's really good.
Yes.
It's a lot of fun to listen to.
So that's 100. But Soraya, we did have that little trivia about episode 10, the missing episode 10, and we explained why that was missing.
Oh, wait, before we go forward, the Mike Stacks book is called Swim Through the Darkness. Sorry, Swim Through the Darkness.
And what's that about?
Okay, so what he does is he talks about, here, I'll read you the description.
Okay.
I haven't, it's soon to be read by me, but you know. Okay, Jeff, so here's the description. Craig Smith was a 1960s golden boy, good-looking, charismatic, outgoing, a preternaturally gifted musician and songwriter whose songs were recorded by some of the biggest names in entertainment: Andy Williams, Glenn Campbell, the Monkees. His future success seemed assured until an unexpected turn of events plunged him into a terrifying darkness. Clean-cut Craig Smith became Maitreya Kali, the self-proclaimed psychedelic messiah. He laid out his poignant, disturbing schizophrenic vision on a sprawling self-released double album before disappearing completely. Author Mike Stacks spent 15 years piecing together the mystery of Maitreya Kali, uncovering one of the strangest and most tragic untold stories of the 60s and 70s. Swim Through the Darkness reveals author Stacks' 15-year quest in tracking down this strange saga of American pop culture. Included in the story are Smith's close ties to the Monkees, particularly Mike Nesmith, who produced and promoted Smith's band Penny Arcade. Also covered are the bizarre self-release albums he made as Maitreya Kali, which now command thousands of dollars among psychedelic music collectors.
Wow.
And when you buy the book, you get a code to download his Smith's music.
Wow.
Yeah.
That sounds really cool.
It's, so I just bought the book and it's waiting to be read.
Nice.
But anyways.
Very cool. All right.
Okay, so, sorry.
No problem. Thank you for
we talked about the episode that had to be pulled.
Yes.
Talking about trivia.
Yeah. So there was another trivia that nobody knows about with our episode.
Correct.
And I have in my files an episode that says episode 42 scratched, episode 44 scratched, episode 45 scratched. Those ended up getting replaced with other episodes.
Yes.
But we had on a guest who I will call PJ. Let's call him PJ.
Sounds good.
This guest, PJ, who was putting out a record and was associated with the scene, with the Paisley underground scene. And we wanted to focus on his new album. So I just thought this was an interesting story to share. No hard feelings, nothing, but we had, what did I say? PJ. We had PJ on the episode, and I thought he was a lot of fun, put off a good energy. We had a lot of questions. But before the episode, he asked that we could send him the questions so he would be prepared. And then afterwards, he asked if we could send him a file so he could listen to it and see if it was worth releasing. Well, after we did that, he said some of the information he gave out wasn't entirely accurate. So he wanted to do a second interview. So we did that. I edited that, sent him that. He didn't like that one. So he asked that we do a third one. So we did a third episode. I edited that. So I typically spend about 10 hours on an episode between editing, preparing, recording, all that. And so we did 3 versions of this interview with PJ. And then after we finished the final one and we sent it to him, the story that we got back is that he did not want us to release the episode, that his bandmates felt like it didn't represent the band well. So that was about 30 hours of time that I spent in, plus your time, and that never got released. So that will probably never get released. The one episode that we spent time on, and so there's that.
Never see the light of day.
Never see the light of day. So the last episode, which could be the last episode 42, the last episode 44, the last episode
or 45.
Exactly. So that was something that I just wanted to share that we've experienced along the way. We've talked about unicorns. I wanted to talk a little bit about that. At this point, we have this little list of unicorns, of people that we would like to talk to that's probably not likely. So let's start with a 3 o'clock. Mickey Mariano is somebody
and we've gotten so close.
Yeah, we got close on a couple occasions. Same with Earl Mankey, who's associated with the 3 o'clock, and that almost happened but didn't. You talked about the Bengals. We've reached out to Vicky, Mickey, and Sue. So those are definitely on our unicorn list. For Dream Syndicate, Kendra Smith, of course, not going to happen, but on our unicorn list. That's why it's called a unicorn list, right? And Carl Prakoda. Right. Where are you, Professor? We'd love to talk to Carl Prakoda. And then for Rain Parade, I think we talked to pretty much everybody that we wanted to. Unfortunately, David Roback and Will Glenn are no longer with us, so those won't happen. We could talk about Long Riders, Sid and Steven. Steven McCarthy. We got close. We got the okay from him that he would join us. That hasn't happened yet, so hopefully that will happen. And Green on Red, we did get an okay from Dan Stewart that he was going to be on our show. Actually, one of the very first guests that we reached out to, December of 2018. Yeah. He was just getting ready to go on tour. He said when he came back that we could talk about it. Things have changed in his life and priorities have changed. So that's a list of unicorns of people that we want to talk to. Of course, there's many others, but related to the scene, those are definitely the top of our list. And then where do we go from here? So we talked with Chris Kakavez and sharing all of this music that he's listened to, and we flipped through albums together, and you came up with an idea. I don't know how much we want to share about this, but for something that we may do in the next year, something associated with playing music or some kind of DJ series or something. We're still working through, so we'll see what happens with that. So
yeah.
And before we go, we got a question. So we started off the episode with Frank Gigrato playing a little theme song for us. He sent in a question for us that he'd like us to answer.
Okay.
So here we go. Listen to this.
Jeff and Soraya, congratulations on episode number 100 of the Paisley Stage Raspberry and Rhyme podcast. I have a question for both of you, and let's move into the future when we're back to live music and live audiences. Of all the bands and artists that you've had on your show that are still active, which one do you want to go see first?
Was he just Was he just ripping on a bong?
That he may have ended that by hitting a bong hit. I'm not sure.
All I heard was, I know that sound.
I'm very familiar. I mean,
I'm familiar.
I've heard from friends that that's what it sounds like.
Sorry, I thought it was me. I thought it was my connection, but no, I think I know what that was. Oh man, that sucks.
So how do you answer the question when
Okay.
of bands that are actively performing, when and if we get back to the time when we can do live shows?
Okay, so of the bands that we know of, 3 of 4 are active. Just a 3 o'clock isn't currently.
Yeah.
Dream Syndicate is still touring and active. Rain Parade has got something in the cooker because they teased us with a couple of photos. John Thoman and Derek C has mentioned that they've been together playing.
Yes.
And we know that the Bangles play.
Yep.
I
will add in that I would love to see Red Cross again, of course. Amazing live band. The Baseball Project was a show that I had tickets to go see.
Yeah.
So that was one. But probably the one that I was most disappointed that canceled is one that we talked about today, and Ronnie came on to promote the tribute to Kim Shattuck. And they had performances by members of the Pandoras, by members of the Muffs, by Red Cross. There were so many bands that were going to be a part of that. And I've heard that all the bands are still committed to doing that when and if we get to the point where we can do live shows again. So that is one show that I would like to see realized and be in attendance for. And we were getting ready for another road trip for Rain Parade, if you remember.
Yeah.
So those are top of my list.
You know, I have to admit, I think of the bands that are still touring and playing, it'd have to be, especially because we knew a show was coming, Rain Parade.
Yes.
And Dream Syndicate.
Yeah.
Can we just have the Paisley Underground reunion just a do-over in 2020 or 2021 or whenever we get to be in a place crowded with people again?
Yeah, that 2013 show was amazing. Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, and we had thought that there was going to be a 3x4 show at one point. There was talks of.
There was rumors of it.
Rumors, yeah.
And it never panned out.
Nope. So logistically, I don't think that was something that was.
But I'm telling you, I support these bands putting out new music, and I'm talking to you too, 3 o'clock. I swear, I love watching them on stage. Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. The energy is palpable.
Yes.
And I would love to have another live show by 3 o'clock again.
Yes, me too.
And play whatever you want, new, in development tunes, old, I don't care. But yeah, that's a hard question because right now live music seems so far away.
Yeah.
But I guess I'd put it there, that 1-2 punch, Rain Parade, Dream Syndicate.
Nice.
And with a hope that 3 o'clock would give me something new too.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for the
music though.
Yeah, I miss live music. Well, thank you so much for these past 100 episodes, Soraya. You've been amazing. It's been really fun getting to know you a little bit more and working with you with all these bands, and you are just awesome. You make my days when I know that we're going to record. Yeah, you keep this thing
It's
running.
been a lot of fun, and I can't wait for the next 100 more, and the fact that you put up with me and my rambling.
No, you keep it together. You're coherent, at least.
I try. sometimes.
My speaking is more along the Trump lines, not in content, but in
In length
maybe so.
and path.
Yeah, exactly, in path.
But to just kind of end this has been a great 100, and Jeff and I wouldn't be here if you guys weren't downloading and listening. So thank you for that.
Yes.
And here's to another 100 more. We hope to bring lots of fun surprises forward. And in the words of Steve Wynn in episode 100, go vote.
Yes,
If
please.
you're a U.S. citizen, go vote.
Yes.
And for all of us around the globe, because we do have international listeners, stay healthy, wear a mask, and let's get back to live music, please.
Yes, indeed.
All right, gente, for the last time in 101, agrubiar.
Groove on, Paisley people. Cool, that was fun.
Hours later.
I know, 2 hours later. That was fun, though.
That was.
That's a good way to wrap 100, I think.
Wrap it up.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Yeah.